First Peter chapter 2 verse 9 has to be the bane of the so-called Christian nationalists' existence, the bane of their existence. Why? Because right here the Apostle Peter says, "You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, and holy nation." A holy nation, right there. A people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Careful, one might become a Calvinist if they actually read the Bible. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Well, how did that happen? Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Yeah, by his grace alone. You are now a people. You are God's people by his grace alone, called out of darkness into his marvelous light. So here is Alex Kochman from the Eschatology Matters YouTube channel. Alex Kochman, biblical versus propositional nationhood. I do like the word propositional, since in epistemology, Christian epistemology, all knowledge is propositional, all knowledge is revelational, all knowledge and the whole Bible is made up of propositional revelation. Those things that we believe as Christians are embedded in propositional revelation. You take away assertions, Martin Luther said, and you take away Christianity. There is no Christianity without proposition. So I like that. But let's listen to what Alex says and how he dismisses 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. The dismissive attitude is what I find absolutely disturbing, but this is Christian nationalism. They can't seem to figure out what their views are, and they end up dismissing and downplaying the importance of 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 and what the Apostle Peter says about the church.
With Abraham. That's the Old Testament picture of things. In the New Testament, yes, you have this statement from Peter harping on Exodus, saying you're a holy race, a holy nation, a holy people, priesthood of all believers. You have that whole idea in there in First Peter. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor to describe what the people of God are. We know the people of God aren't just one nation because we look at the end, we look at Revelation 5, 9, 7, 9, etc., and we see a people from every nation is what's found in the eschaton. And so we know that some idea of nationhood is retained. And what I would say, honestly...
Well, who's arguing otherwise? But to downplay and just simply say that the holy nation that 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 is talking about is a metaphor without explaining the literalness of that metaphor. You see, so what's a metaphor? Figure of speech, word or phrase applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. However, in every metaphor, there has to have some literal meaning attached to it, or the metaphor means nothing. It is meaningless. So, what do? Look at this, AI overview. They absolutely have it correct here. It's not always correct on the AI overview stuff, but this is 100% correct. Yes, every metaphor must have a literal meaning. Yes, every metaphor must have a literal meaning underlying it. Right? Even if that comparison isn't true in a literal sense, it must have some sort of literal meaning underlying it. So if you're going to downplay 1 Peter chapter 2, where he says you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a people for his own possession, called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, you better have a good explanation of what he means here by unholy nation. Here's what I would suggest. How many nations are in the world? How many countries in the world? 195 recognized countries in the world, according to the United Nations. Out of these 195, 193 of these countries are member states of the United Nations. Only 2 accepted, that are 2 non-member observer states, are the Vatican and the state of Palestine. I would suggest to you that all these nations right here are fleeting and fading away and will be destroyed utterly in what's called the conflagration. The liquefaction by fire, as Dr. John Gill called it in his commentary on 2 Peter chapter 3. The liquefaction by fire, the conflagration. Christ himself will destroy every single one of these nations. In other words, none of these nations, not one of them, are eternal. Not one of these nations are eternal. Here is this holy nation, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. You are a chosen race, royal priest, a holy nation. This is eternal. This is whatever this nation is, if you want to call it a metaphor and not tell us what the metaphor actually means, But whatever this holy nation is, this what do you call it? Ethnos ཧάγιον. Ethnos ཧάγιον. A nation holy. A holy nation. Whatever that nation is, in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, it's going to be eternal, and not one of these are going to last unto the ceaseless ages of eternity. They'll all be burned up. All of them. Every single one of them. None of these are going to stand throughout the ceaseless ages of eternity. Only this one. All right, so he says something about Peter was harping on Exodus. Well, no. It's look at Deuteronomy 10:15, Isaiah 4. You guys can do the work and just look it up, obviously. But he is quoting from the Torah. He is quoting from Exodus, but also Revelation 1:6 and Revelation 5:10. Priesthood, Isaiah, a holy nation, Deuteronomy 7 verse 6, right out of the Torah. Exodus and Deuteronomy, we've seen right out of the Torah. So what Peter is doing is taking texts from the Old Testament, the Torah and the prophets, and he's applying these labels, this terminology to the church. That's pretty radical. That's pretty radical. Peter was teaching radical truth here, most likely through Silvanus is probably the one who actually wrote the letters of Peter, Silvanus being Peter's amanuensis or secretary. Most likely Silvanus was well schooled in the Greek language and how to write it. Peter most likely could only speak it. He probably couldn't write it very well, which is typical in the ancient world. If you knew 2 or 3 or 4 languages, you might only be able to write one of those languages. But notice this. That's beside the point. You are a chosen race, royal priest, a holy nation, people for his own, out of darkness. Let's go. This is darkness. All these nations, 195, whatever nations, darkness, 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 darkness. Only the called out ones, the holy nation, those have been called out of this darkness of these nations into his marvelous light. Okay? And we are thus sojourners and exiles. Sojourners and exiles, being a holy nation out of all of these nations, but we are sojourners and exiles with all these fake, fraudulent, fugazi nations that will not last. Sojourners and exiles. Let's go here to Revelation chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. From Jesu Christu, the faithful, Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, firstborn of the dead, ruler of the kings on the earth. He has loved us and freed us from our sins by his blood. Careful, you might be a Calvinist if you hold to the high view of the atonement that we hold to, and made us a kingdom, priest to his God and Father. He made us by his blood a kingdom. Now, is that just metaphorical? Kingdom? What about Jesus as King of Kings, Lord of Lords? Is that just metaphorical too? Behold, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him. Here's Revelation 5, 9 through 10. They sang a new song. Worthy are you to take the scroll. This is talking about Jesus. For you were slain, and by your blood you purchased or ransomed people for God from, out of, every tribe, language, and people and nation. You have made them. You have made. Careful, you might be a Calvinist if you read the Bible. You have made them a kingdom and priests to our God. Is that just metaphorical language? No. They shall reign on the earth. When? When? After the liquefaction by fire. After the conflagration. After all these other fake, fraudulent nations are wiped out. Only the one nation, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, the holy nation of Christ, will stand. Revelation 7, verses 5 through 9, of course, we have the 12,000. This is all symbolical language representing what? A great multitude from every nation. That's why I like the ESV headings. There's sort of a summary of what the texts are about. But this is what the 12,000 from every tribe are. After this, I looked at a great multitude that no one could number, from, out of every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages standing before the throne. Out of, they are called out ones, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes and palm branches in their hands. Okay, so that's my point. The dismissive attitude about 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. It is the bane of the Christian nationalists' existence. Whenever we throw 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 at them, because they can't hold to their false views of Christian nationalism when you say, no, the church is already a nation, a nation of called out ones. So you don't go looking to try to make all these nations Christian. I mean, that was tried throughout Europe already. Ever hear of the quote, the so-called Holy Roman Empire, right? That was already tried, where you tried to enmesh church and state, and it did not work out. It never works out. It only ends in oppression and tyranny. So let's not dismiss, and just by saying it's a metaphor. If you say it's a metaphor, you have to give us the literal meaning. Okay, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Lord willing, talk to you soon. Soli Deo Gloria.